My people, today we have done what the world thought impossible. Burkina Faso has built its own electric car. This declaration did not come from Silicon Valley. It did not echo from the factories of Tokyo or the design labs of Berlin. It came from Ouagadougou, the capital of Burkina Faso, a country most global tech analysts have long overlooked. The car is called ITAUA, but ITAUA is not just a car. It is a symbol, a punch in the face of the century-old narrative that Africa can only consume, never create. It is living proof that Africans do not need permission to innovate. For decades, when the world spoke of electric vehicles, it spoke of Tesla in the United States, Volkswagen in Germany, BYD in China. These names became synonymous with speed, software, and a future driven by clean energy. But no one mentioned Burkina Faso. No one imagined that a country with no historical car manufacturing base, dependent on importing second-hand vehicles, could one day design and produce its own electric car from scratch. But that day has come. Ibrahim Traoré, the bold young president of the nation, called ITAUA a 21st century declaration from Africa to the world. He stated with firm clarity, "We will not only buy technology, we will build it. And we will start with the most improbable project, crafting a car of our own." Imagine this. A country that once spent nearly $81 million a year importing used vehicles has now emerged as a creator of high-tech innovation, not for luxury or prestige, but for purpose, dignity, and direction. Burkina Faso is no longer content being a consumer in the global economy. It now speaks the language of engineering, invention, and confidence. What makes this car revolutionary is not just the engineering, it is the philosophy. It is a direct challenge to the idea that progress must be imported, that African innovation must come second, that development means borrowing, depending, waiting. With ITAUA, Burkina Faso is saying no, not to dependency, no to waiting, no to second place, and yes to building, yes to leading, yes to daring. When Africa News and other outlets reported the launch of ITAUA, they didn't just describe a new car. They captured a movement. Africa News called it a symbol of what happens when belief meets bold leadership. And rightly so. This isn't just about electric motors and solar panels. This is about mindset, about choosing to act rather than to beg, about creating jobs, retaining value, and investing in people, not just products. If you had been told 10 years ago that Burkina Faso would be the one to produce a fully indigenous electric vehicle, you might have laughed. But laugh no more. The world is changing, and it is changing from places that were once ignored. Let me ask you this. If you were sitting beside Ibrahim Traoré on the day ITAUA was unveiled, and you heard him say, "We did not ask for help, we asked for time, and we used it wisely," what would you feel? Would you smile with pride? Or would you rethink everything you assumed about what Africa could do? If this story moved you, if it challenged your assumptions, drop a comment below. Let us know, can Africa lead in innovation? And if you want to hear the rest of this incredible story, how this car was built, what it means for the future, make sure to subscribe, because this is just the beginning. Burkina Faso is no longer a footnote in the conversation. It is a headline, not because of oil or diamonds, but because of courage, not because of foreign aid, but because of fierce self-determination. This is not just a car. This is a call, a spark, a starting engine for a continent's new direction. Stay tuned. The road has just begun. No billionaire stepped in. No foreign tech firm donated blueprints. No global news outlet predicted it. And yet Burkina Faso built the ITAUA. If the unveiling of ITAUA shocked the world, what came before it should humble it. Because this wasn't just a car launch. This was a miracle of self-determination forged in sweat, soil, and sun. When the engineers in Ouagadougou first sat down with a blank notebook and a stubborn dream, they weren't thinking about competing with Tesla. They were thinking about survival, about how to stop their country from spending millions on used, fuel-hungry vehicles, about how to keep young minds in Burkina Faso instead of losing them to Europe or the Gulf. They knew they didn't have billion-dollar R&D labs. They knew the odds, but they also knew something more powerful, that Africa is capable and the time to prove it was now. The ITAUA project began with a simple yet revolutionary idea. Do not replicate the West. Redesign everything to fit the African environment, from the suspension to the battery. Every part of this car had to survive the heat, the dust, the distance, and the doubt. And that's exactly what they did. They developed battery systems tailored to the Sahel's punishing climate. They built shock absorbers for unpaved village roads. They installed solar panels not for luxury, but because in a country where electricity is unreliable, the sun is the most dependable ally. This was not copycat engineering. It was indigenous intelligence, applied with precision. It was innovation not from textbooks but from the soil up. And the most powerful thing, it worked. The ITAUA can travel over 330 kilometers on a single charge. It can recharge in under 30 minutes. It generates energy from solar power. It is smart, durable, and most of all African. Ibrahim Traoré, never one for hollow praise, called it a citizen-born vehicle. He reminded the world that this was not a gift from an NGO or a donation from a multinational firm. It was built by Burkina Faso, for Burkina Faso. And what does that mean? It means jobs. It means local skills. It means that when a young child sees the ITAUA on the road, they see their country moving forward. Africa News reported that the car's success has already inspired research labs across the continent, from Nairobi to Accrato, start exploring local EV design. This is how movements begin, with belief, then blueprint, then breakthrough. If you believe that innovation belongs to every nation, hit the like button now. Would you ride in an ITAUA? Would you invest in African-built tech? Leave a comment and tell us where you stand. Let us be honest. Global experts scoffed at this. For years, reports from the West told Africans what they could and could not build. They said it was too expensive, too complicated, too early. But now, those same experts are revising their forecasts. Why? Because the world is seeing what Burkina Faso is capable of, not just in theory, but on the road. This is not the end of the story. This is the ignition. So to all who once doubted, the dust has settled, the drive has begun. And to all who dream of a future built at home, by our own hands, this is your proof. Stay with us. The next turn is coming. What happens when a car becomes a movement? When a machine, built from wires, wheels, and solar cells, becomes a torch carried by a continent? That is what ITAUA has become. It is no longer just a vehicle, is a signal flare to the rest of Africa that the age of waiting is over. The age of building has begun. In the weeks following the launch of Burkina Faso's electric car, something extraordinary started to happen, not in Paris or Washington, but in Lagos, Nairobi, Addis Ababa, Kigali. Young inventors, university engineers, and local manufacturers began asking the same question. If Burkina Faso can do this, why not us? It was as if someone had lifted the veil. For decades, Africa had been taught to believe that industrialization was something to be imported, assembled from foreign parts, licensed by outsiders, subsidized by donors. But now, the conversation has changed. The ITAUA made something clear. The real limitation was never technology. It was belief. Across the continent, small initiatives began to sprout: electric motorcycle projects in Kenya, solar-powered tractors in Uganda, locally built battery research in Rwanda. These weren't copycats. They were echoes of confidence, inspired by one bold act from a country once dismissed by every economic forecast. Burkina Faso, a landlocked nation with limited resources, had done what richer, more industrialized African countries had yet to do. It had dared to lead, and in doing so, it gave others permission to dream differently. The implications go beyond electric cars. They reach into Africa's entire industrial future. For too long, Africa has existed on the periphery of the global manufacturing map. It exported raw materials, gold, lithium, cobalt only to buy them back in the form of expensive finished products. Now, conversations are shifting. Governments are beginning to ask, why don't we refine our own minerals? Why don't we manufacture here, for ourselves? Ibrahim Traoré has called this moment the beginning of a second independence, an independence not won on the battlefield, but on the assembly line. He has urged African nations to stop competing for foreign grants, and instead collaborate on factories, universities, and trade corridors. And the response? It's building, quietly, steadily, in Ghana. A consortium of universities has announced plans to open the country's first EV design lab. In South Africa, a private company is testing solar charging hubs modeled after the ITAUA prototype. And in Senegal, A local startup is studying how to manufacture low-cost electric buses using regionally sourced materials. The message is spreading not from podiums, but from blueprints. Africa News, reporting on this ripple effect, noted, the ITAUA may be Burkina Faso's gift, but it has become the continent's spark. If you believe Africa should not just import progress but build it, type "We build" in the comments. This is how we declare our stance. Share this story with someone who thinks African innovation is a fantasy. Let them see reality with 4 wheels and a solar-powered future. Of course, this movement faces resistance. Skeptics still whisper the same tired lines. It's not scalable. It's a publicity stunt. Africa doesn't have the supply chain, but those voices are getting quieter, not because they've been silenced, but because they're being outnumbered by doers, by builders, by believers. There's a new energy on the continent, and it's not just electric. It's emotional, intellectual, continental. It is the realization that Africa's greatest resource isn't what lies underground, but what lies within. And ITAUA is proof of that, not just in steel and circuits, but in the mindset it has awakened. This is why the global tech giants are starting to pay attention. Reports from industry analysts now include the phrase, Africa, emerging ITAUA challenger. International investors are quietly reaching out to African startups. Governments, once skeptical, are beginning to remove import taxes on battery components and to offer land grants for factories. Why? Because the tide is turning. Burkina Faso didn't just build a car. It triggered a conversation that cannot be unspoken. It gave Africa a new language for power. The language of making. This is more than an industrial shift. It is a cultural shift where dignity is measured not by how much aid you receive, but by what you produce with your own hands. So, the next time someone says Africa is not ready, show them the ITAUA. And the next time someone asks where the next chapter of global innovation will be written, say this: not in Silicon Valley, not in Berlin, in Ouagadougou, in Accra, in Kigali, in Us. For decades, Africa was taught to wait for development loans, wait for infrastructure plans from abroad, wait for permission to dream. But with the launch of ITAUA, Burkina Faso has made something unmistakably clear. Africa has stopped asking permission. This isn't just a story about an electric vehicle, it's a story about sovereignty, about what happens when a nation steps outside the shadows of its past and declares, we will shape our own future. And at the heart of that declaration stands one man, Ibrahim Traoré. While the world debates in boardrooms and publishes think tank papers, Traoré is doing something far more disruptive. He is acting. Under his leadership, Burkina Faso has shown that vision doesn't need to be borrowed from the West. It can be grown at home, powered by courage and clarity. And the world is paying attention. Multinational corporations who once treated Africa like a dumping ground for old vehicles are now sitting up in alarm. Why? Because ITAUA is not just a product, it is proof that the monopoly is broken. That innovation can rise in Ouagadougou, just in Silicon Valley or Seoul. Africa News reported that several global automakers have quietly reached out to Burkina Faso's Ministry of Industry, not to offer help but to ask how they did it. It's no surprise, because when a country like Burkina Faso, long ignored on the global stage, builds a world-class electric car, it disrupts the entire script. Think about it. If a startup in a landlocked West African country can engineer a solar-powered EV on its own terms, what excuse does a trillion-dollar corporation have for not doing the same? The implications run deep. Institutions like the IMF, World Bank, and World Trade Organization have long operated on the assumption that African nations must depend. That development only flows in one direction from north to south. But what happens when the South starts inventing? When it stops borrowing ideas and starts exporting them? That's exactly what we're witnessing. And it's not a comfortable moment for those who've held the reins of global power for so long. If this message resonates with you, if you believe Africa deserves more than just advice and handouts, leave a comment. Tell us, should Africa follow or lead? ITAUA is a technological achievement, but it is also a philosophical earthquake. It sends a message that could destabilize entire business models. Used car markets across Europe, once propped up by dumping their inventory into African ports, may soon find their most loyal customers building their own vehicles instead. This is what happens when innovation is rooted in dignity. Of course, resistance has come. Some media outlets have tried to downplay the achievement, It's just one car, they say. Or, can it scale? But beneath that skepticism lies something deeper. Fear. Fear that if Burkina Faso succeeds, the excuses made by richer nations will collapse. Fear that innovation is no longer exclusive, and that fear is justified. Because this isn't just about one car. It's about thousands more. It's about solar stations. It's about battery factories. It's about a new generation of Africans who no longer aspire to leave but to lead. That's the legacy Ibrahim Traoré's crafting. Not just in words, but in working prototypes, in functioning assembly lines, in policies that reward local production over foreign dependency. This is not revolution with slogans, it is revolution with steel and software. If you were sitting in a rural village and saw an ITAUA pass by, how would it make you feel? Inspired, curious, proud? Let us know below. The age of asking permission is over. What comes next is a new kind of engagement tone where Africa sets the terms. Burkina Faso has fired the first shot, and the echo is being heard far beyond its borders. This is no longer about whether the world will take Africa seriously. It's about whether the world is ready to compete with her. The world took notice when Burkina Faso built a car, but the true test now lies ahead. Can it build an industry? The unveiling of the ITAUA proved what was possible, but one victory does not make a revolution. If Burkina Faso is to lead the African electric vehicle movement, it must now do something much harder scale. It must turn a singular success into a self-sustaining ecosystem. Mass production is the next mountain. Crafting one car in a workshop is a miracle of dedication. Building 10,000 in a year requires infrastructure, logistics, a skilled workforce, and, most of all, faith. Not just faith from the government, but from investors, from buyers, from the people. The country's leadership knows this. President Ibrahim Traoré, in a recent address, made it clear, we did not build a symbol, we built a prototype of our destiny. That destiny depends on scale that begins with factories. Burkina Faso must establish production lines that can match demand without compromising on quality. This will require new partnerships, not ones based on exploitation, but on mutual respect and shared purpose. Already, discussions are underway to open regional production hubs in cooperation with neighboring nations. If successful, Burkina Faso would become not just a manufacturer, but a center of knowledge transfer for African engineering. It could train specialists, exporteurs, and help other countries replicate its model. But production is only one side of the equation. The other, infrastructure. Electric cars need charging networks, not just in Ouagadougou or Bobo-Dioulasso, but in every town and village that wants to join the future. That's why the solar-powered aspect of ITAUA is so groundbreaking. It means charging doesn't depend on the grid, it depends on the sun. And Africa has plenty of that. This is where Burkina Faso could leap ahead. While Western nations struggle to retrofit their aging infrastructure, Africa can build solar-first charging stations from scratch. Imagine every market square, every school, every bus terminal fitted with solar panels, places where communities gather, also becoming nodes of clean energy. Would you support a network of community-owned solar charging stations in Africa? Comment below what role should people play in building the infrastructure of tomorrow. Building an industry also means training people. And not just engineers. You need electricians, coders, welders, designers, logistics coordinators, managers. Education must evolve. Universities and vocational schools should adapt their curriculum to this new wave. That's already starting. The University of Ouagadougou has announced plans to launch a degree in sustainable automotive engineering. Similar programs are under development in Senegal and Ghana. Africa News reports that Rwanda and Kenya are sending delegations to Burkina Faso to learn from the ITAUA experience. This is what real leadership looks like. Not hoarding knowledge, but sharing it across borders, inspiring others to act. But let us not ignore the challenges. Scaling an industry is expensive. It will require materials, supply chains, risk management, and your patience. Investors must be brave. Citizens must be involved. Governments must provide stable frameworks. Are you an African in the diaspora? Would you invest in a homegrown electric vehicle company if given the chance? Tell us below. Let your voice shape the future. Perhaps the biggest obstacle will be perception. Many people both inside and outside Africa still assume that foreign-made means better, That a car built in Burkina Faso cannot match one from Japan or Germany. That's why ITAUA must not only perform, it must inspire. It must become more than a carrot, must be a movement. Burkina Faso's government is planning an electric Africa Tourer roadshow that will take ITAUA to schools, universities, business forums, and rural towns. The goal? Let people touch the future with their own hands. Let a child in a dusty village see that something as complex as an electric car was built by someone who looks like them. That is how you change narratives. That is how you scale a dream. Like what you're hearing? Then don't just watch, join. Like, comment, and share this message so that more people know what's possible when we believe in ourselves. This isn't just about economics. It's about emotional ownership. The ITAUA must become a point of pride, a conversation starter, a symbol of possibility, and with every mile it travels, it plants seeds of ambition in the hearts of the next generation. Burkina Faso is at a crossroads. One path leads back to dependency. The other charges forward, powered by sun, steel, and spirit. The choice is clear. The road ahead is long, but the engine is running. Africa is no longer waiting. It's accelerating. The success of ITAUA is not just shaking industries. It is shaking stories. Because for over a century, the world has told one story about Africa: poor, dependent, chaotic, a place to pity or exploit, rarely a place to learn from, never a place to follow. But now, with a single electric car born in the heart of Burkina Faso, that story is beginning to crack. And when a story cracks, power shifts. Because power isn't just about weapons or money. It's about who gets to speak and who is forced to listen. For generations, the West has dominated the global conversation. Through media, cinema, tech, and textbooks. It wrote the script. Africa was cast as background. The ITAUA says, enough. Burkina Faso didn't just build a car. It reclaimed the mic. It forced global headlines to feature a nation they had long ignored. It made business analysts ask, how did they do that? It made schoolchildren from Nairobi to Bamako sit up and say, why not us? If you believe it's time Africa rewrote its own narrative, like and comment. What story about your country should the world hear? This is more than symbolism. It's strategy, because narrative is economics. Perception shapes investment. If a country is seen as corrupt or backward, money avoids it. But if it's seen as bold, capable, and visionary, investors start calling, students start dreaming, diaspora starts returning. That is the real war ITAUA is fighting. Not just a technological one, but a psychological liberation. And so far, it's winning. Even the biggest automakers, those who once ignored Africa, are starting to panic. In recent months, brands from Asia and Europe have sent emissaries to Burkina Faso, offering partnerships. Some are genuine, others are cloaked attempts to absorb or dilute the ITAUA model before it becomes too powerful. But the people of Burkina Faso have learned from history. This time, the script is different. President Ibrahim Traoré has already warned, we will collaborate, but we will not surrender ownership. We are not a colony. OD. Would you support laws that keep African tech companies majority owned by Africans? Let us know below. The world is watching. Of course, the fight is not only external. Inside Africa, there are still deep wounds left by decades of disempowerment. Many Africans struggle to believe that their continent can lead, that we can build, invent, export ideas instead of raw materials. That is why representation matters. When a rural grandmother sees her grandson working at a solar car factory, her worldview shifts. When a young girl hears that the lead battery engineer on ITAUA was a woman from her village, something unlocks. Education becomes exciting. Migration no longer feels like the only option. Dignity is restored. It is also why media coverage of this story must not fade. We cannot let this be a one-week wonder. We must build a drumbeat of pride. Repetition, documentation, celebration. This is how movements gain momentum. If you want more media to cover African innovation, share this post. Let journalists know that these stories matter, that we are not waiting for permission to be proud. Across Africa, a new generation is watching. Some are building apps. Some are planting drought-resistant crops. Some are creating fashion lines, films, online courses. All of them are pieces of a larger puzzle. Africa, speaking for itself. ITAUA did not come out of nowhere. It came from years of invisible work, often dismissed or mocked. Now that it's visible, it's unstoppable. And it's not alone. Ghana is developing its own local EV motorbike. Tunisia has launched an aerospace startup backed by students. Nigeria is creating microgrids powered by algae. Each of these is a rebellion, a refusal to let the old script define the future. But ITAUA is special, because it's not just a product, it's a prototype of possibility. So the question now is not, can Africa build? It's, will the world listen? Will we listen to ourselves? Because once you take the mic, you must know what to say. Let our words be fearless. Let our inventions be loud. Let our people know. We are no longer the footnote. We are the headline. If this message touches your heart, leave a comment. Subscribe. Share it with someone who doubts Africa. Remind them, we are not done. We've just begun. In every great story, there comes a final bender moment, not of ending, but of truth. For Burkina Faso, for Ibrahim Traoré, for all of Africa, that bend is now. Because building one car, launching one dream, that is the spark. But keeping the fire burning, that is the calling. What lies ahead is not just a technological challenge, but a moral one. Can Africa sustain its momentum without losing its soul? Can innovation coexist with community? Can the pursuit of excellence honor the wisdom of our elders and the dreams of our children? Because this last mile is not paved with machines, it is paved with values. The ITAUA is not just electric. It is ethical. It was born not from profit, but from principle, from a belief that Burkina Faso could stand on its own with dignity, in a world that long refused to see it as equal. That belief must now shape every decision going forward. Do you believe innovation should serve the people first, not profit? Share your thoughts. Let your values fuel the conversation. We must resist the temptation to rush, to scale at any cost, to chase foreign validation. The ITAUA must grow, but in a way that respects land, labor, and legacy. Every bolt tightened, every battery installed must honor the hands that shaped them. That is why education will remain the cornerstone. Already, schools across Burkina Faso are introducing EV modules, solar energy basics, and mechanical design to secondary students. But it cannot stop there. Adult retraining centers are opening in Bobo Dioulasso, helping former miners, drivers, and farmers learn new skills for the green economy. Mobile workshops are being deployed to rural areas where elders and youth work side by side, assembling solar charging units together. This is not just development. This is reconciliation between generations, between tradition and technology. IBOT. Would you attend a community tech school if it meant rebuilding your hometown from within? Comment below. Tell us where such a center should rise next. Meanwhile, Africa News has reported that Burkina Faso is in talks to create the continent's first Pan-African EV cooperative structure, where member nations co-own design rights, share innovations, and coordinate export strategies. This is what Pan-Africanism looks like in action, not just speeches, but systems. President Ibrahim Traoré has been clear: we do not rise by imitating empires. We rise by uniting villages. And those villages are watching. From the hills of Rwanda to the deserts of Niger, from the ports of Senegal to the farms of Malawitha, is a shift in the wind. People are not waiting for orders. They are organizing, innovating, dreaming aloud. The world, too, is starting to watch differently. Once skeptical headlines are turning into profiles of promise. Investors who once only saw risk are now seeing resilience. The same countries that exported hand-me-down machines now ask how they can collaborate. But let us be clear. Burkina Faso does not owe the world a miracle. It has already given it. What comes next must be on its own terms, and those terms must include justice. The mining of lithium must be fair. The wages in factories must be livable. The designs must reflect not just efficiency, but identity. Because if the future is not just, it will not last. This is what makes ITAUA historic. Not its speed, or range, or solar panels, but its spirit. It tells the world that Africa is not here to ask for a seat. It is rebuilding the table. So where do we go from here? We go forward, but together, with laws that protect our builders, with schools that uplift our thinkers, with leaders who listen more than they speak, with citizens who choose pride over pity. If you believe Africa deserves to lead its own future, click like. Share this message. Tell your family. Let your children hear you say, the future wears our fingerprints. The road will be long. There will be breakdowns, detours, disappointments, but there will also be joy, laughter, invention, celebration. And one day sooner, convoy of solar-powered cars will pass through a village, and a child will point and say, "That is ours. Not borrowed, not imported. Ours." The last mile is not about arriving, it is about becoming. And Burkina Faso has already taken the wheel. Let us ride. After subscribe now, comment with one word, hope, because that's what this journey is made of.